Good morning, my dear students. Now we are going to finish our novel, Chapter 10, David Copperfield, titled by Death and Discovery. In this chapter, we will reach to the maximum conflicts and events between all the major characters till the end of our novel. We will start with Uriah Heep and his bad actions and bad deeds, which he did with all our major characters like David, like Agnes and her father. Number one, when they gathered with each other or when they met with each other at this meeting, he said he would show to all of us the proof of Uriah Heep's weakness. Dora was too ill to come with us, so traded my aunt, my Mr. Dick, and I traveled to Canterbury by coach. Why? To face Uriah Heep and his bad events and actions. Then page 79, when he faced with Mr. Micawber, when he said, "But I don't choose to leave. Listen to me, Heep, I don't care if I lose my job." Mr. Micawber said that, "I don't wish to work any longer for the weakest man in England." So Uriah fell back, shocked, looking slowly around at us, and with a dark, evil expression on his face, he said, "I see," means I understand. "You have all arranged this between you, but I know who to blame for this. It's you, Copperfield. You are jealous of my new position, aren't you? But I know things about all of you which I can use against you. For example, I know about your father's business mistakes. Mrs. Agnes and I know about your past in the warehouse, Copperfield. So be careful, I warn you all." As we can see, it's a war. It's a war between all our characters. Here, at the end of our page, the old fool has been drinking too much again. He means Agnes's father, Mr. Wakefield. Said Uriah, looking uglier than ever. "You can't believe anything he says, and you have bribed my assistant. I supposed to speak against me." Uriah said all of that. Here, "I am sorry to say I was so involved in all these wicked plans. I may be poor, but I can't accept his lies." Who said that? Sure, Mr. Micawber. "His cheating, his bribes, and all the rest of it. And so I have brought you here today, ladies and gentlemen, to hear me accuse him publicly." Here, he has sometimes what his bad deeds or what did he do for cheating his business and work with Mr. Micawber and Mr. Wakefield. He has sometimes copied Mr. Wakefield's signature onto false documents and checks. 3, for years he has been stealing large amounts of money from Mr. Wakefield and the firm. "You can never prove it," cried Uriah wisely. He was attacking them. He was conflicting with them. "I have taken copies of all the necessary documents." This is the shock Mr. Micawber did for Mr. Uriah Heep. Said Mr. Micawber confidentially, "While working as your clerk, and just to make sure, I have given them to Mr. Treadles to keep safely." Here, suddenly, my aunt attacked Uriah also, hitting his head with her umbrella. "Give me back my investment." She meant her money or her lost money. She cried, "I thought Mr. Wakefield had lost my money, and I didn't want to hurt Agnes by saying so. But now I know you have had control on the firm, and you have stolen my money. Somehow I managed to get her away from him before she hurt him too badly." Here, my aunt had a wonderful idea for the Micawber family. After doing this favor for them, "Have you ever thought of going to live in Australia?" she suggested. "It's a new country." "Why Australia, especially Australia? Why?" "It's a new country with a lot of business opportunities." Mr. Micawber was very interested. Something could easily turn up there. He agreed. My aunt generously offered to lend him the necessary money to pay for the journey, and the whole makeover family started planning and baking immediately. In the middle of my terrible sadness, here David said this to us. I received a message from Emily. She asked me to take a letter from her to Ham. Her last words to the man who had loved her so much before she and Daniel left England, also for Australia. 2 ships have gone down, sir. A local fisherman shouted to me. A few miles away, we couldn't save any of the men on them. The waves were too high, and look, there is another. The crowd on the beach cried out at the ship. Rolled, and a huge wave swept over it, carrying the men into the rushing water. In a moment, the only figure we could see was the curly-haired young man holding his Presley on the other side of the ship and calling for help. What could we do? It was certain death for any man to enter these waves. Here, page 86. One evening, I arrived in a village in Switzerland. I received a packet of letters that had been waiting for me. David said this. The first one I opened was from Agnes. She gave me no advice, but she told me simply that she trusted me to find a purpose in life. She encouraged me to continue my life. I loved Agnes. She has been the one who has always guided and supported me, and now I realized I needed her love for the rest of my life as his wife, as Dora asked her before her death. However, I decided to return and traveled home to England after 3 years of absence. I was delighted to find that Reyes had married his Sophia and was doing well as a lawyer. My aunt had moved back to her old Dover house. Everything came back again in well events, and was living happily with Mr. Dick and Biggity. When I visited my aunt, I took the opportunity of asking her about Agnes. I was firm with myself and didn't show my feelings. I borrowed a horse and rode to Canterbury to ask Agnes myself about marrying him. When I saw that beautiful, gentle face again, I knew I had come home. I know how dear she was to me and would always be. Agnes, I said, I am so grateful to you for making me what I am, for helping me to be good, but I think you have a secret. There is something I must tell you, David, she said gently, looking calmly into my face. I have loved you all my life. Wow. She added, and something else. Before our sweet Dora died, she asked me. Dora herself asked her to marry David. Can you guess? To fill the empty place in your heart. And Agnes laid her head on my shoulder and cried, and I cried with her, although we were both so happy. And at the last of our novel, when I think of my friends and the family, Agnes' lovely face shines above them all. She is here next to me as I write, and I hope that when all my life comes to end, she will be with me in the shadows, pointing upwards to the light. Here we have finished our last chapter of our novel, David. Now concentrate with me on our questions and the quotation in our booklet. Chapter 10. Answer the following question. Why did Mr. Makeover send letters to David and Tommy Treadle? Why? To ask them to come to Canterbury in order to show them the proof of Uriah Heep's weakness. Number 2. What were the 3 accusations made against Uriah Heep by Mr. Makeover? First, or number 1, he confused and lied to Mr. Wakefield. Always he did this. 2, he copied Mr. Wakefield's signature on 2 false documents. 3, he stole a lot of money from his partner and the firm. 3, what did Mr. Makeover's discovery mean for David's aunt? It means that her money wasn't stolen or lost. and could be returned again. 4. Where did the Micobers move to and why? They moved to Australia because it's a new country with a lot of job opportunities. 5. Why did Uriah do what traders asked him to? Because traders asked David to get the police and threatened to put him in prison. 6. Why did David go to Yarmouth after Dora's death? To deliver a letter from Emily to Ham before she traveled to Australia. 7. Did Ham receive Emily's letter before she traveled to Australia? No, because he died before David could give him the letter. 8. Why were there many crying women in the street in Yarmouth when David arrived? Because there was a violent storm and the women were afraid for their husbands and the brothers who were out fishing in the sea. Question number 9. Who was the active figure on the ship during the storm? What happened to him? It turned to be still force. He was trying to survive, but he died. 10. How did Ham die? He was hit by a huge wave while trying to rescue Steer Force. Comment on the following quotation. Number 1. I see you have all arrangements between you, but I knew who to blame for that. Sure, Uriah said that to the people in the office. He thought that David was the leader and is the one who arranges his meetings. 2. I have taken copies of all the necessary documents. Who said that? Mr. Micober said this to Uriah to prove that he had the evidence of his weakness. 3. Don't try to rescue that poor sailor, you will kill yourself. David says this to Ham when he was going to rescue a sailor, as he didn't know it was Steer Force, but he had been beaten to death by a great wave. 4. Before our sweet Dora died, she asked me to fill the empty place in your heart. Who says that? Agnes says that to David. When she confessed their love to each other, she told him that Dora, before her death, asked Agnes to marry David. Here we have finished our chapter, my dear friends, and good luck for all of you. Thank you.